Now, brothers, in closing, I want you to take this pledge. When I say I want you to say I, and I'll say your name. I know that there's so many names, but I want you to shout your name out so that the ancestors can hear it. Take this pledge with me. Say with me, please. I say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will strive to love my brother as I love myself. I say your name. From this day forward, will strive to improve myself spiritually, morally, mentally, socially, politically, and economically, for the benefit of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name. Pledge that I will strive to build business, build houses, build hospitals, build factories, and enter into international trade for the good of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will never raise my hand with a knife or a gun to beat, cut, or shoot any member of my family or any human being except in self-defense. I say your name. Pledge from this day forward, I will never abuse my wife by striking her, disrespecting her, for she is the mother of my children and the producer of my future. I say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will never engage in the abuse of children, little boys or little girls, for sexual gratification. But I will let them grow in peace to be strong men and women for the future of our people. I say your name. Will never again use the B word to describe any female, but particularly my own black sister. I say your name. Pledge from this day forward that I will not poison my body with drugs or that which is destructive to my health and my well-being. I say your name. Pledge from this day forward, I will support black newspapers, black radio, black television. I will support black artists who clean up their acts to show respect for themselves and respect for their people and respect for the ears of the human family.
make a man, it takes courage, patience, skill, and most of all, love. Welcome to Vision for Young Men, the show designed to help you be the best man you can be. Now here is my dad, Alonzo Richard.
Well. Thank you, Tommy, for that introduction, and thank you for joining us this evening on the program. It's been a rough day today, but I got a lot of things done, even though the day was kind of rough. It's a Wednesday, hump day. Is it hump day? Oh my God, it's hump day, y'all. Well, listen, what I want to talk to you about is very, very important. And I think you should just share this broadcast with somebody. Just click on share. I know I might sound controversial, but I'm not controversial. I'm a pussycat. I'm cool. Share it with somebody. Because, and if you're listening on YouTube, by the way, don't hesitate to like us on YouTube. Let's get right on into the program this evening. Before I do, though, I want to make sure that I let you know that school has started today, at least in North Texas. School has started, and that's why they've been working me like crazy, going from school to school. And then in addition to that, getting my own boys enrolled in college and in high school and in their classes, and shuttling people to work and back. It's been a rough one today on a Wednesday. This evening's program, I have to tell you, I was somewhat reluctant to do it. I was in a meditative state a few weeks ago, and Liz Cheney her face kept coming to my mind. Her face just kept coming to me. This was about 2 weeks ago. And I was just kind of wondering what was going on, this in my meditation. Why was this occurring? Why was this particular individual? And, she's been in the news, but I mean, I watch the news and Donald Trump never shows up in my meditations, but Liz Cheney showed up in my meditations, and I had this unction to speak on this particular subject tonight. And the more I thought about it, the more I started getting thoughts coming to me, and I started seeing things and I started seeing this puzzle coming together. And so I want to share this with you this evening. Our subject this evening is the farewell address of George Washington, the love-hate relationship of Black America, and the rise of the biblical Saul who corrupts nations. Before I do, I was going to tell you, make sure if you have a child that is in school, elementary, high school, middle school, college, and you want that child, that individual, that son, grandson of yours or whatever to get the leg up in his mathematics and science studies, go to brainstormforlife.com, sign them up for our tutoring service. We will show them how to use their powerful Texas Instrument calculators to master the ACT and the SAT and the AP calculus. Sign them up. The first one is going to be a study of how to study mathematics and science. There's a technique. My boys are mastering the subjects because I showed them this technique on how to study. You'd be surprised that what a little understanding of the technique of the study of math and science will do. So go to brainstormforlife.com, brainstormforlife.com. Sign them up. So I was talking about Liz Cheney, and this sense of peace was on her face in that vision. I'm going to call it that for just to say this. And it inspired me to speak to this subject tonight. And I think that as I go through it, you'll understand how she fits into the dynamics of all this, what I'm speaking to tonight. The farewell address of George Washington, the love-hate relationship of Black America, and the rise of the biblical Saul, who corrupts a nation. I want to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, that the universe is in the process of taking a giant evolutionary step. I don't know why it was given to me to speak to this. I had other plans, but this is the way it is. We're taking an enormous evolutionary step. And you know, the process of evolution can be a little perplexing to you because of the stress it caused from leaving from one paradigm, if you will, to another paradigm. It can be a little stressful, and I know it is, and I've been trying to help people get some counseling and all those kind of things, because a lot of people, especially our children, are going through a lot of things. They're not being able to express themselves like we as adults, and we're going through. And the children can't express themselves like we can express ourselves. So can you imagine what it's like to not be able to express yourself and go through the same stresses of a war, of a pandemic, of the national stress that's going on? Let's get right on into the subject. I want to start off with reading something out of A Course in Miracles. If you have not gotten your copy of A Course in Miracles, I would like to encourage you to do that, to get your copy of A Course in Miracles. Every human being has to take this course and will take this course. Jesus sat for the Course in Miracles, and that's why he was able to perform miracles. It wasn't published in the way it's published today, obviously, but a course, you know, the Bible says that he learned obedience by the things that he suffered, not necessarily suffering as in pain, but suffering as in taking the time to learn. The impatience that come with the process of time, of learning through time. Get the Course in Miracles, brothers and sisters. Reading from The State of Grace, and I just want to read a little bit, and this is going to set the tone for some of the tough material that's going to be laid out this evening. And I'm not going to take too long. You know I can be long-winded, but I'm not going to take too long today, because I tell you, it was a long day as it was. And this just Wednesday. When the mind has only light, it knows only light. Listen carefully. Its own radiance shines all around it and extends out into the darkness of other minds, transforming them into majesty. God gives only equality. If you recognize his gift in anyone, you have acknowledged what he has given you. Now, I want to just take a moment to explain that, because I'm setting you up for what's going to be discussed. And some of you going to be maybe up chucking, throwing up, having fits, and whatever the case is. But I'm here to resurrect you, to revive you, and make you whole. The Bible says that the light that came, this is in St. John, for you Bible scholars out there, you know this, that John came to bear witness of a light. And it went on and on and on. It said he wasn't that light, meaning he wasn't the source of the light. He was not the source, but he came to show the light, to bear witness of that light. And it goes on to say it's the same light that lights every man that comes into the world. This should give you confidence in what I'm about to share with you, to help you to understand how to elevate. And then it says here in the course that when a mind has only light, it knows only light. So what we're going to do is walk through this darkness with the light in our mind. It will guide us through the dark period, or the dark cloud, I should say. So now I want to deal with the farewell address. You've been equipped. You have the light. Some of us have buried our light, have hidden it under a bushel, as Jesus talked about in the Sermon on the Mount. And by the way, in the Sermon on the Mount, he was not talking to those who was walking around all pious. He was talking about the pimps, the haves, the drug dealers, the drunkards, people who had a very low self-esteem. That's who he was talking about. And when the preacher showed up in that situation, he called them vipers. So he said that you are the light of the world, but they didn't see themselves as such. But Jesus saw the light of the world, the light that lights up the world in them, even though they didn't see themselves as being light. So when the Course says that when a mind has only light, it knows only light. And then it goes on to say, if you recognize the gift in anyone, you have acknowledged what he has given to you. So when Jesus called you the light of the world, it was him acknowledging the light that was in him. And this is the key. To see the light in someone else, and you are bearing witness of the light that's in you. Now, you are equipped. It might still be under a bushel, but I think I just poked a few holes in that basket, and light is peeking through that basket that's in your mind, that's covering up the light that's in you. I want to talk about the farewell address of George Washington, who was the first president of this nation. And I'm tying this into Liz Cheney. I'm tying this into the love-hate relationship that Black America has. And I'm tying it to the rise of the biblical Saul in the hopes of helping us. This is the cloud that we got to walk through. So when I was pondering this and thinking about some of the things that might be said as a result of me talking about this farewell address of George Washington, I mentioned it to somebody, and they kind of said they went on a rampage. They was having difficulty because of George Washington. They had all these things that George Washington was. He was a slave owner. He was this, that, and the other. And it was difficult for them to contemplate what could a Black person get out of the farewell address of George Washington. And so you might have some reservations and some resentments because George Washington owned slaves and had lots of plantations, and he was a straight up capitalist. And then there are others who are going to may have difficulty because they think that politics and religion should be separate. They should be separate. And I want to say to you right off the bat that, number one, you're right. We don't want religion. So get it out of here. But with respect to governments and the political system, you notice all through your Bible, God dealing with with nations. And most of the time he was dealing with nations rather than individuals. So you have to understand it, that if your God, your deity, your power, your spiritual source cannot deal with you wherever you are and on all levels of your life, then you might need to consider getting yourself a new one. So this is not religion that we're going to be dealing with, but it's spirituality. And the story of Saul is going to bring that out. And then others might have reservations because they may think that what relevancy, how is it relevant, George Washington's farewell letter to America, what does that have to do with us today? So let me get right into this. George Washington wrote his letter as he decided not to take a third term as president. And that's how we got the amendment that, by the way, that actually limited terms to 2 presidential terms. That's how we got that, because George Washington, the first president, did not want to become a long-term ruler, and he didn't want to set that precedent, so he took 2 terms. But the people were a little taken aback in that day because he was such a respected leader. But he wrote them a letter, and having done his best to quell their fears that the country would still survive after him, he wrote a letter to them as a final letter or final communication as president. And he stressed the importance of the union that had bonded all Americans together and provided for their freedom and prosperity. He reminded that the independence and liberty that the nation had and enjoyed was the result, listen, of common dangers, was the result of common sufferings together, and the result of successes, common successes. Now, I'm going to read something because I'm feeling somebody having a difficulty with this, with me saying this. What you talking about? What that got to do with the black man? I want to read something to you before I take another step, because I can sense you. I want to read something out of Message to the Black Man. This was written by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad of the Muslims, and he was the teacher, the primary teacher of those you respect: Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Farrakhan. He was their primary teacher. So I want to read something to you to ease your stress, because I'm sitting here talking about George Washington, because you're about to get a lesson that you never thought you was going to get from a white man who had slaves. Listen to what Elijah Muhammad said. On page 174 of Message to the Black Man, he's talking about what the Negro must do. And he was laying out something had to do with the economic blueprint, as well as putting the Muslim program to Congress in order to help fix some of the damage that had been done to our fathers and to us as a result of our American experience. He said, observe the operations of the white man. He is successful. He makes no excuses for his failures. He works hard in a collective manner. You do the same. Now he said, study him. Study his successes and how he handles his successes and his failures. And you you take the same attitude. So how can you study something if you never pay attention to it at all, but you push it off to the side as though you're not connected to it in some way, yet you're living under the rulership of the very thing that you're rejecting, and you won't go nowhere. You're staying right here between Mexico and Canada and the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific. So settle down and pay attention. We're talking about this letter that he wrote, and watch what it gets into so that you can see what's happening right now today and what the sign of Liz Cheney losing this primary last night has to do with the evolutionary step of the planet, as well as the evolutionary step of the United States and the citizens of the United States. So this letter he wrote, he reminded them that they had participated and that this suffering and these dangers and this successes is the thing that glued the nation together. Now remember, brother, you were a part of that. You remember you fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War, just like white folks fought on both sides of the Revolutionary War. There were white folks who were of the colonists who fought with the British. There were black folks who were in slavery that fought with the colonists. And there were black folks who were on the side of the British, fighting against the colonists. So a war has no limits, just like peace has no limits. And yes, the colonists turned around and did to our fathers exactly what they were saying in the Declaration of Independence that the British was doing to our fathers. But still, that doesn't take away from the fight, the warring going on, and the blindness in every mind, the darkness in every mind that is the result of the warring spirit. So this letter he wrote is very timely. And I want you to listen now very carefully and take notes and do some back study on me. George Washington cautioned the new nation against the three interrelated dangers that threaten to destroy the Union. We talked about union in that last Sunday, and I told you that the mind, the human mind, the property of human mind is unity. And you can't have unity and division at the same time. But the evolutionary step that they had taken up to that point was he was trying to keep a union together and go and grow towards a more perfect union. And he said that there were three interrelated dangers that threatened to destroy the Union. And he cautioned them against it. This is the president that they all respected most because he was a military man that he gave himself over to the law and said, I'm a military man, but this is a civilian government. And so as a civilian government, you don't want a military man running a civilian government. So the three dangers that threaten to destroy the Union: regionalism, partisanship, and foreign entanglements. Regionalism, partisanship, and foreign entanglements are the three dangers that threaten the Union. Now, let me break them down a little bit for you. These three things. Regionalism, because a lot of the colonists were still identifying with where they lived, the state they lived. Well, let me just kind of give the overall first. He warned the countrymen that not to let regional loyalties overwhelm national attachments. Yeah, that says it right there. No, don't let regional loyalties overwhelm national attachments. The name America must always be the one that's exalted and is the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. What that simply means that don't let your state interests or your party interests or your regional interests blind you to the union. Regionalism. Don't allow your state interest to overwhelm the united interest, because your rights as a state are wrapped up in the union. So he says, don't let regional loyalties overwhelm national attachment. The name of American must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation or any appeal derived from local discriminations. At the time, many Americans primarily identified with their state or region, but Washington reminded the citizenry not to allow such attachments to divide them. Let's listen. If you let regional attachments divide you, designing men will convince you that differing local interests made the union unworkable and unnecessary. Once somebody saw that they can pit this state against this state against this state, they have a design to convince you that your area and your area and your area is different. And that the union is unworkable because the strength is in the union. I keep getting phone calls. And either I'm not, if you're calling me, oh, there's music going on. Okay, somebody's saying there's music going. So let me shut down any music that might be going on here. Let's see what's going on here. I don't hear it. Let me turn it down. If something's going, it ain't going now. How about that? Thank you for that. So your strength is in the union, not the individual states as separate. And that if you started dealing with yourself in regionalism, that designing men who do not have your best interests at heart will come in and exploit that. So in particular, Washington feared that geographic identities would serve as the foundation for the development of political parties. So indeed, the process had already begun with the emergence of the New England Federalists and the Southern Democratic Republicans. So he warned against political parties. And then he viewed them as inseparable from the American political process, but he condemned them as divisive, disruptive, and tools of demagogues seeking power. Political parties would make the country open to demagogues. You know what a demagogue is? A demagogue appeals to passions. So he was concerned about that because he saw that would happen. Factionalism, as contemporaries called it, encouraged the electorate to vote based on political loyalty rather than the common good. And this is what Washington was trying to get them to see. See yourself in your brother. That's why I was reading to you from A Course in Miracles. The light in you, you got to know how to see it in others. And it's a testimony of the light that's in you. And he said that the factionalism based on political parties and that demagogues who rise up under those situations, it would lead to a spirit of revenge among the political parties, in which party men would not govern for the good of the people, but only to obtain and maintain their grip on power. As a result, he warned Americans to guard against would-be despots who would use parties as a potent engine to subvert the power of the people and usurp for themselves the reins of government. Does this ring a bell about what's going on in the nation right now? Now, if you notice, there is a struggle going on in the nation right now, and it's not a struggle of ideas, and which is the best idea, but it's a struggle of between individuals and personalities. And it's rooted in parties. It's rooted in political parties. If you listen to the arguments, you're not listening to somebody saying this is not good for the nation and that's not good for the nation. You hear this individual is subverting democracy. That individual is trying to keep power. Demagogues would rise up under that circumstance and literally destroy the Union by causing and exploiting, I should say, the factionalism. And then the other thing that would make the country vulnerable. Are you ready for this? And this is the saddest part. Ever since Obama got out of office, it has been reoccurring in my mind. And I've been attributing it to a movie that I watched a long time ago, where some politician had gotten in bed with the Russians, and the Russians, under the cover of this politician, invaded the country. There was a movie set to that. So here George Washington explained that the greatest danger to the Union, though stem from the combination of factionalism and an external invasion. Didn't you think it strange that the Speaker of the House went over to Taiwan, and the big dog on the block, China, is throwing a tizzy fit, and then another delegation of partisans do the same thing, who are the enemies of the Democrats. So they're not going representing the nation, because they're not going as a united front. They're going as the Speaker of the House, who the other people, the other group that went, hates. So he said the greatest danger, because of the exploitation of the demagogue that would rise up under this factionalism and under this regionalism, would set the country in a position to be invaded. And I know you think that's a far-fetched idea, but because you don't pay attention to real global economics and not paying attention to what's happening around you, that you're stuck on paying your debts because you're so deep in debt, like the country is deep in debt. And you don't see the connection between the Russia invading Ukraine and what's being said here by George Washington. You don't see it. He said, Washington explained that partisanship opened the door to foreign influence and corruption. You see that? Foreign influence and corruption, because it weakened voters' ability to make reasoned and disinterested choices. Rather than choosing the best men for office or women, listen, this is what you would wind up doing. Rather than choosing the best men for office, and that's going to take you to when I go to Saul, the people would base decisions on ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, and so elect those in league with foreign conspirators. That's what you would do. He said to avoid outside interference, Washington advocated a foreign policy based on neutrality and friendly commercial relations with all. He concluded his address with some brief musings on his legacy. He spoke to contemporary concerns that the Union was weak and vulnerable to attacks from internal and external enemies. Now, I'm not going to go through any more of this. I wrote quite a bit there, and I want to give you an overview of the spirit of this man and how does it fit today. What is going on today that is perplexing everybody, but is really towards the evolutionary step that we're taking. So, again, going to Liz Cheney and how that she was voted out of office because she decided that no man is above the law. And if you listen to the reason that they voted her out of office, it had to do with this sentiment. She's not speaking for the people of Wyoming. But what was she speaking for? She was speaking for the Union. She decided that the interests of Wyoming was subordinate to the interests of the Union as a whole, so she spoke for the Union. And this is what George Washington talked about regionalism. You will begin to vote not for the best person. Nobody in their right mind think that woman that beat Liz Cheney is the best person for the job. She spoke to no policy except general terms, saying that Liz Cheney did not speak to the interests of Wyoming. This is what George Washington warned about: regionalism. You make your individual corner more important than the survival and the thriving of the United States. And so America voted against the United States. That's what that represents. This is the symbol that it represents. But symbols and signs are for the enlightened mind. Symbols and signs point you to something else. So now I want to deal with the love-hate relationship of Black America and talk about that for a minute. I'm going to bring it all together. If you listen to me, it sounds all fragmented, but you're going to see that I'm going to bring it all together. The love-hate relationship. Most of us know that Black folk have been the most loyal citizen in this country. Despite the brutality the double dealing, despite the discrimination, the practices of banks, banking practices, of housing practices, of educational practices, of spiritual and religious practices, we have been the most loyal of citizens. And this has made us very strong. This has given us and developed in us a connection to the God that comes through the fire that purifies a person. Now, I don't like being in the fire no more than any other man, but I got to tell you, the fire has been the thing that has purified me throughout my life. And I'm trying my best to just go through without having to go through any fire. But it has been the fire. So this goes for a people as well as individuals. It goes for a nation as well as individuals and peoples and races, that the fire purifies. And Black people has been the most loyal of America in the face of some of the most brutal treatment anybody could endure. And as I said, that treatment and that fire has purified our spirits and caused us to be open, more open to spirit and hearing spirit. And now we are taking an evolutionary step along with the rest of the planet. So, to put it in perspective and tie it to this partisanship that George Washington talked about, we still are no more innocent, if you will, I'm just using that term, than anybody else. We can't talk about how some folk are doing things and we are stepped back and we ain't doing things the way they're doing it, because we are. Let me show you. Do you know that because of the way we've been treated in spite of our loyalty, we have this love-hate? We love what's in the Constitution. We love what's in the Declaration of Independence. We love all the platitudes and the good sayings of America. And we so want to raise and wave that flag. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Bull! Says the Black man in his hate side. This dual relationship we have, love, hate. We love the sound of it. We love the words. We love the laws. We just hate the way they administered when it comes to us. But yet, we would rather suffer than to remove ourselves from the situation that is bringing about so much pain. And we don't know because nobody has told us, up to Dr. Fleming, because I'm going to tell you, I don't have no filter and don't want one. We are doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. This election, I'm coming back to that. This last election of Joe Biden was the first election that white folk voted in droves for Donald Trump. I mean, overwhelmingly. But Donald Trump didn't win the election. And the reason that they can't believe it is because they don't believe so many white folks voted for Joe Biden. But Joe Biden won. Listen, Joe Biden won because the United States put him in office. This was the first election that white people did not elect the president. The majority of white folks voted for Trump, but Joe Biden won because the United States, that means the family, the human family, white, black, Asian, Arab, whatever, came together and voted. This was a step, and America don't want that. She doesn't want that evolutionary step to the United States. She don't want to take that step. See, the United States put him in office. And now you see the demagogues taking advantage of this white supremacist spirit that white folk gonna have to extricate from themselves. Now, you ain't much better, brother. You and I ain't much better because we still are addicted to suffering ourselves. Because we voted overwhelmingly Democrat, and the Democrats has been doing nothing under various faces but exploiting us, giving us lip service. And we keep complaining and belly aching that we want them to do right, and we vote for Democrats at a clip of 99%. And Donald Trump asked a question during the first election, and we wouldn't even discuss the validity of the question. I don't care what you think about him, but I'm talking to you. Consider the question. See, you got to learn how to look past the obvious and see the obvious. He asked a question. What do you have to lose, black man? I don't like you, and I'm going to tell you I don't like you. They don't like you, but they making you think they do like you. What do you have to lose by voting for me? It was a good question to talk about, but we were silent. The conversation was silenced because it was a good conversation to begin a real discussion as a man. What do I have to lose? And then start counting up the cost. Okay, you've been doing this. Start taking inventory and basing it on the good of the country. See, you would have done that. He still would have lost, but at least you would have got something out of it. Check this out. To show you that we need to make some adjustments too in the black community in our mind, we can't keep pointing the finger at the white man. He got his own troubles to deal with. But we happen to be in this nation, this United States, and the God is elevating us, and he is no respecter of person. She is no respecter of person. They are no respecter of person. It is no respecter of person. Let me tell you what we did. In our hate side, see, our love side is offset because we keep on allowing the ego, the devil side of us, to govern our behavior. We say we want freedom, justice, and equality. We say we want to be treated as equal citizens in this country. We say we want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But an opportunity showed up that's now illuminating something else. During the last election, black folk voted again 99% for Democrats who have never done anything except toss out crumbs and give us sweet rhetoric. They won't even discuss reparations, which we talked about in our homes. We're talking about it in our homes and in our little circles and in the barbershops. We're talking about it. We dare not talk about it in public. But when one talks about it in public, we're so cowardly in our behavior that we won't even vote for that person. And then we wallow in the pain of the person who got here, not recognizing that we literally appealed to our pain side because we didn't want to release the pain. Some of you are saying, what in God's name are you talking about? I'm about to show you. During the last election, I want to ask you how many of us voted for this person right here.
This is part of the dark underbelly of American society. The racism, the bigotry, and the entire conversation that we're having here tonight, if you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days. And the underlying cause has to do with deep, deep, deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason.
You have been at the forefront of the discussion of reparation. We're almost out of time. Can you just give me a 2-second
Yes, I want to make America
distillation of
whole.
that?
And a country is like an individual. You can't have the future you want until you clean up the past.
And I also like you because you want to give $100 billion in reparations
No more than that.
to black people. More than that.
200 to 500 is the number that I sort of landed on.
Woo!
I think that if you look at the historical arc of race relations between whites and blacks in America, I think, I don't believe that the average American is racist. I don't. But I do think the average American is vastly undereducated or underinformed about the history of race in America. For every slave family of 4, they were to be given 40 acres and a mule. Politics is usually a conversation that is so disconnected from emotion, so disconnected from heart, so disconnected from our deeper human reality that given that, no wonder it became so easy for that political system to separate us from our wisdom. Germany has given $89 billion in reparations to Jewish organizations since the Holocaust. And I believe that that $89 billion has gone far towards establishing reconciliation between Germany and the Jews of Germany and the rest of Europe. Reparations carries an emotional and psychological and even spiritual force.
Okay, I don't know if you heard that, but I'm going to play it again because I think the sound was down, and I don't think anybody heard that. If you're listening and you have my did you hear that? Because if not, I'm going to play it again. Let's see. Somebody text me and tell me if you heard that. Did you hear Marianne Williamson, or was it too low? I don't know. I'm going to play it again. So, because this is important. This is very important right here.
This is part of the dark underbelly of American society. The racism, the bigotry, and the entire conversation that we're having here tonight, if you think any of this wonkiness is going to deal with this dark psychic force of the collectivized hatred that this president is bringing up in this country, then I'm afraid that the Democrats are going to see some very dark days. And the underlying cause has to do with deep, deep, deep realms of racial injustice, both in our criminal justice system and in our economic system. And the Democratic Party should be on the side of reparations for slavery for this very reason.
You have been at the forefront of the discussion of reparation. We're almost out of time. Can you just give me a 2-second
Yes, I want to make America
distillation
whole.
of that?
And a country is like an individual. You can't have the future you want until you clean up the past.
And I also like you because you want to give $100 billion in reparations
No more than that.
to black people. More than that.
200 to 500 is the number that I sort of landed on.
Woo!
I think that if you look at the historical arc of race relations between whites and blacks in America, I think, I don't believe that the average American is racist. I don't. But I do think the average American is vastly undereducated or underinformed about the history of race in America. For every slave family of 4, they were to be given 40 acres and a mule. politics is usually a conversation that is so disconnected from emotion, so disconnected from heart, so disconnected from our deeper human reality that given that, no wonder it became so easy for that political system to separate us from our wisdom. Germany has given $89 billion in reparations to Jewish organizations since the Holocaust. And I believe that that $89 billion has gone far towards establishing reconciliation between Germany and the Jews of Germany and the rest of Europe. Reparations carries an emotional and psychological and even spiritual force.
That was Marianne Williamson. Now, just in case you don't know who she is, let me give you a little background on her. She wrote a book called A Return to Love, and she is a child and a teacher of A Course in Miracles. That's A Course in Miracles baby saying that for my Course in Miracles audience that's listening. She talked about this during the last presidential run, and she predicted that the Democrats were going to see some dark days. And she saw the connection between reparations and the dealing with America's original sin and what's going on right now. She saw that connection and she spoke it. She spoke to it. Now, I want to say to you and ask you a question. How many black folk in this audience voted for Marianne Williamson, even though she was the only candidate going specifically? Barack Obama didn't go specifically towards any of your issues. Barack Obama went specifically for gays. He did something specifically for women. He did something specifically for Hispanics. He did something specifically, dealt with issues. But even Barack Obama refused to do something specifically or address specific issues of Black America. But we voted for Barack Obama twice, 90%. Marianne Williamson speaks directly to the issue. She said reparations. She gave a number. She's running for president. More white folk voted for Marianne Williamson than black folk. Not even 1% of black voters voted for Marianne Williamson, even though she was the only candidate running that specifically dealt with your issue. Or she can't win. Well, what do you have to lose? As though you're going to get something for voting for somebody who's just going to give you lip service. More white folk saw the power in what Marianne Williamson said and was ready to heal this nation and voted for her. And less than 1% of black people voted for Marianne Williamson. I voted for her even though she dropped out. She dropped out of the race, but I voted for her anyway. This is what Liz Cheney is doing. Liz Cheney is saying, I can't win. You know, she's not saying I can't win. She said there is something more important than a seat in Congress. So we voted, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, for more pain. Black brothers and sisters, we voted for more pain. That's what we voted for. This is part of the hate relationship that we have with America. The love-hate, the love part that makes us faithful to the ideas of America, but we have built a wall to love. And the only thing we got to do is remove that wall that keeps us from experiencing love fully. We think that love is weak, but love is the strongest force in the universe. Believe me, it's the strongest force in the universe. Love is. I'm going to clap for myself. So we voted for towards more hatred, our hatred part, so we can experience more of our hate. And the very people that we bellyache about heard the message of Marianne Williamson and voted for her. So you see the intertwining going on here, the transition going on here, the translation, the removing from this whole race idea going on here. You got to be able to look a little deeper to see it. You can't look on the surface and see it. You got to look beneath the what's obvious and look at the obvious. So the whole creation, ladies and gentlemen, says the Bible, are groaning. The whole creation is groaning and travailing and waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. And so God said, out of Egypt, I have called my son. Watch it now. I'm about to drop something on you. In the Bible, it says, out of Egypt, I have called my son. This was referring to Jesus going to Egypt, being in Egypt to avoid death. And then when the ones who was after him were gone, that's when he came out of Egypt. And that's when he began his ministry. But there's a bigger symbol going on here. There's a bigger sign. Oh, they ain't taught y'all this in them cemeteries. You got to get it from the God. There's a bigger sign here. Egypt is a symbol of slavery. Egypt is a symbol of oppression. Egypt was a symbol of a degradation of a people. But God's son is in Egypt. And he's calling his son out of Egypt. Now his son is in many forms. See, because the whole creation is groaning, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. The world don't know who they are. See, the world can't see it, but it's still waiting for the manifestation. So he's calling us out of Egypt, people. And what came out of Egypt under Moses was a mixed multitude. It was not one race, one color. It was people and nations. It was of all nations. Brothers and sisters, you got to see this, or you're going to go down with the devil. He's on his way out. Out of Egypt, I have called my son. Out of oppression, I'm calling you. Come out from among her. Out of Egypt, God is calling us out of pain, out of hate. Out of Egypt, I have called my son is a symbol, a sign, a mystery for the time we are in. Release pain, release oppression in your own life, release the alts in your life so that you can see the Son of God. You can't see him, ladies and gentlemen, because you're still in Egypt. Now, black man and woman, America is our Egypt. And out of Egypt, he is calling his son. He's calling the sons to be manifest. The sons who are in this Egypt have to come out. Come out of the oppression. Come out of the pain. Come out of the fear. The fear of doing for your children what you know is the right thing to do. The fear of doing for your lady what you know is the right thing to do. Come out of all that. and release it all. The world is waiting to see. So now going to another point, and this has to do with the rise of Saul in the Bible. And I'll be done. We're a little after 9. So without going to the Bible and reading it, you have to go to it yourself. It's in the book of Samuel in the Bible. You have to read it yourself because I'm not going to read it. I read it already, and I got the story up here. The nation of Israel, remember, he was dealing with nations. This is how the all, the God, the mind, you call him what you want, Jehovah, Allah, whatever, Jesus, whatever. Do you think with this name thing, we get hung up on these names? Do you think that you can call out of love and he not answer? And just because you call him something that somebody else didn't call him, do you really think that the all is offended by your call out of love? Do you really think that? Do you really think, Reverend, that you have cornered the market on God? Do you really think that? Yeah, I know you do. But not your real thoughts. Your real thoughts know better. We want to get us in touch with our real thoughts. But Israel, in the book of Samuel, rejected God's choice for the nation and for what he wanted to do. He wanted to lead them. They didn't want that. They wanted to look like everybody else. They wanted to look like, they wanted to have a king over them. They wanted to have a dictator. They wanted to have somebody like that. So they didn't want that. They didn't want a leadership model that allowed them to express themselves individually and allow them to all to contribute to the health and well-being of the nation. They wanted to look like the other countries. So the God said, oh, okay, that's what you want. You want to experience that? This is what's coming to you. One gonna come that's gonna exploit every single part of your nation. One is gonna come that's gonna exploit your daughters. One is gonna come that's gonna exploit your children. He's gonna corrupt every single thing about your nation. In this Bible story, Saul was a rich man. He came from a rich family and he had resources. And he looked strong to them. He looked like a mighty man that didn't take no shit. He didn't take anything. That's the way he was the man. He's the one that's going to make us like the other nations, strong and a bully. And like, but this one coming, God said, okay, that's what you want. Just before he's fully unleashed, I'm going to show you the peace that you could have had through the ones I chose for you. Now, how do I tie this all up and get out of here and let y'all go to bed? Barack Obama was the president of these United States of America. And Barack Obama wouldn't make a step towards doing anything to offend anybody, especially white folk. Barack Obama walked a thin, straight line, the biggest scandal Barack Obama had in this country was he wore a tan-colored suit. And white folk went ballistic over it. But somehow, this guy they got in here now, grab him by the, you go figure. Barack Obama had a great family, had great children. He was cultured. He was a man that that knew how to get things done. He was highly educated. When Barack Obama, when there was a conflict between a college professor and a white police officer who broke in the man's house because he thought he was breaking in his house, and he arrested this college professor, this Cambridge professor, Barack Obama, in an effort to make peace, because he saw what it was doing to the country in terms of racism, this college professor and this black president sitting there and this white officer, and coming off the heels of Trayvon Martin, and he made the fatal mistake of saying, that could have been my son. White folk went ballistic. So in an effort to bring peace to the nation, had a beer summit. And we all know who the real focus of the beer summit was, that Barack wasn't really trying to make black folk look good, because this is a college professor with a police officer. And in spite of the beer summit, in spite of him walking back saying, okay, yeah, I could have spoke better about Trayvon Martin. It was such a horrible killing for a man who now is bragging and walking the streets, now suing the parents of Trayvon Martin. And Barack let it slip that he identified with Trayvon Martin, said, that could have been my son. And y'all went ballistic. And so when this happened, he was able to do the beer summit, trying to bring peace in the nation. But it didn't matter what Barack Obama did. It didn't matter. He came from a great family, great children, great wife. You called his wife a monkey. You disrespected him. And his wife. Both of them highly educated. And you were so incensed that you put trailer trash in there. You went ballistic. I'm just saying this so you can see your own self for a change in your thinking. You went ballistic over Michelle Obama's shoulders being shown, but I done seen Trump's wife's breasts. I have seen Trump's wife's vagina. I have seen Trump's wife's ass. We all are in this fire. So you rejected the peacemaker, and Jesus said, blessed are the peacemaker, for they shall be called the children of God. And the world is waiting for the manifestation of the children of God. You see, do you see that? You were so incensed, many, that you put a piece of trailer trash in the White House. Read the story of Saul in the Bible, and it will give you a good idea of what we got to go through in this country. But I want to say this, not to leave you feeling depressed, that on the other side of it, The United States is coming out of it. And we're going to be a better people, brothers and sisters. Like Martin said, I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. Yes, I have. I've seen it. And I'm here to tell you, it's going to be nations and peoples and kindreds and the former things we won't even remember. But what we got to do is simply got to release it. Just remove the blocks to love. It's not getting us anything but pain anyway. And all of us want the same thing. We want to raise our families. We want to live in a good environment. We want to love. We want to party. We want to have fun. We want to worship. We want to praise. We want to do whatever you want to do. That's wholesome. We got the chance to do it right now. Saul is in place right now. And yes, we got to go through this. We got to go through it. But hopefully something I'm saying here will make it just a little bit easier, a little less scary as we walk through the dark cloud, because God is holding our hands. And the only thing we have to fear is the anticipation of our fears. But look at Liz Cheney. Look what she did. She saw the bigger picture. And do you see how peaceful she was? Did you notice the peace that comes from doing God's will? I'm ready. Well, I'm done. Good night.